This hour of the Costa Report is brought to you by IBM. Big data at the speed of business.
Welcome to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and thank you for joining me for another 2 hours of Straight Talk Radio. I want to take this opportunity to welcome our men and women in uniform who are joining us today over the Internet, and also new listeners in Chicago, Boston, Miami, and the San Jose areas. Thank you for being with us. In just a moment, former chief political correspondent for CNN and host of State of the Union, Miss Candy Crowley, will be here to give us a Washington insider's perspective on today's headline stories and talk about the highs and lows of covering multiple presidencies. There are few journalists who have had greater access to the White House and Congress, so we're in for a rare treat. But before Crowley joins us, as is my custom each week, let me tell you a little about her background. Candy Alt Crowley was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan, but moved shortly thereafter to St. Louis and Creve Coeur, Missouri, and then Chappaqua, New York. She's a graduate of Randolph-Macon Women's College in Lynchburg, Virginia. Crowley's career in journalism began when she was hired as a newsroom assistant at Washington, D.C. radio station WASH-FM. She later went on to become an anchor for Mutual Broadcasting, White House correspondent for the Associated Press, and worked for NBC as a news correspondent before finding her home at CNN in 1987. In addition to being the chief political correspondent for the network, Crowley hosted Inside Politics and the popular Sunday morning talk show State of the Union. Late last year, Crowley announced her decision to leave CNN. No one was surprised that she would leave on a high note, and what a high note it was. Her last interview was with President Obama. I want to add that Crowley has been the recipient of 3 Emmys, the Broadcasters Award from the Associated Press, 2 Dirksen Awards from the National Press Foundation, the Edward R. Murrow Award, the Leonard Zeidenberg First Amendment Award, the Gracie Allen Award, and more honors than we have time to cite today. Suffice it to say, Crowley has broken new ground in everything she's undertaken, whether it was becoming the first female in 2 decades to moderate a presidential debate or the first female to anchor a Sunday morning news magazine. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Costa Report a journalist who has lived and breathed politics for almost 3 decades, Miss Candy Crowley. Thank you for joining us today, Miss Crowley.
Oh, Rebecca, please call me Candy, and thank you so much for having me on.
Well, I'm just thrilled to talk to you, and congratulations on your retirement from CNN and also your interview with President Obama. You know, I realize it's only been a few weeks since you stepped away from something that you've been doing for decades, so how's it feel so far?
Well, the funny thing is I've been sick almost since the last day at CNN, which was the 21st, until now, where I'm about 95, 98%. So I said to a friend, you know, I don't know if it's a fair judge how I do without CNN because I've spent most of my time flat on my back in bed. But listen, it was time. I mean, as you've noted, I've been at CNN for 27 years. It's not so much that I'm retiring. I am retiring from CNN, as you correctly put it, but looking for something new, someplace new, as soon as I maybe take a trip to go scuba diving somewhere.
Well, you know, I've heard of a lot of people that get sick on vacations. They get sick when they leave a job. It's almost as though you give your body permission to just collapse or something.
Well,
Isn't it odd?
Collapse. But yes, that's what it felt like, you know, and you don't want to spend, my children going, well, wait a minute, it's our first Christmas where you weren't looking at your, you know, iPhone or on the computer to see if anything had happened, and you're going to spend it in bed, and yes, indeed.
I'll tell you, the same thing happened to me. I sold my company in Silicon Valley, and I was in bed the first 2 weeks, and I hadn't been, the other odd thing is I hadn't been sick for years prior to that.
Yeah, I think there's something in you that mentally kind of goes, and it signals to your body to go, okay, lie down.
Absolutely. Well, during your tenure, the media has gone through a huge transformation, and I don't think anyone could have anticipated 10 or 20 years ago that news bureaus would have to hire people to watch what's happening in social media or on YouTube or even that there'd be so much consolidation in the media business. So, yeah. So in your experience, what changes have most impacted political reporting?
I think just the sheer number of outlets. And I've always thought, no matter what politician I covered, that there always was some sort of attribute that politician had, which was both a great strength and a great weakness. And I feel the same way about this subject matter. Mm-hmm. I'm an information junkie. I think that more people putting out information. I'm also a First Amendment girl, so I'm all about freedom of the press and, people picking up the pen or sitting down at their laptop, whatever it is. But it has diffused information across such a broad spectrum that it's very hard to keep up with the truth. And I think that's the biggest change, is just the sheer – I remember covering George W. Bush campaign in 2000. And at that time, a woman named Alexandra Pelosi, who now I believe still works for HBO, but she's Speaker Pelosi is one of Speaker Pelosi's children, mm-hmm. who came on board with one of those little handheld cameras. And it was rolling all the time. And it was, at that point, we still had cameramen lugging 9,000-pound cameras and a sound guy and a producer and all of that. And she had a camera. And an entire documentary came out of it that was very interesting and revealing and all of that. But it was the beginning of folks coming on a campaign which was nonstop. So 24/7, you've got a candidate that is never off camera almost. And I think that changes it. When you go into Iowa in the early days, and let's say right now somebody goes to Iowa because they want to see what Mitt Romney's going to do there on a visit, or Jeb Bush, or, whoever it happens to be. At this point in earlier cycles, you could hop in a car with a candidate and drive around to Iowa and go in the living rooms, and you sort of really learned who the candidate was. And I have to tell you that now, from the get-go, it is a traveling zoo. Like it generally is at the very end of a campaign. Mm-hmm. Now it's that way at the beginning. So I feel as though it has taken the press further away from the candidate and who that person is and what they're made of.
It also puts a lot of pressure on the candidates. I mean, they used to be able to manipulate their message depending on the audience or the demographics they were addressing at any particular event or state. And they tailor what they said a little bit. You're familiar with that from having been on the campaign trail. Now they can't really do that because, they'll go to speak to a union, and then after that a group of business owners, and it'll be all over YouTube. Well, he said this to this person, but he changed his message to another individual.
Absolutely. And that's, to me, that's great, right? Because it means there are cameras and microphones everywhere. So that's as I said, there's always the greatest strength is always the greatest weakness. So to me, that's a great strength. They are accountable as long as there's someone around with a cell phone and a camera, right? Doesn't even have to be a journalist. But the problem
But are the journalists accountable? I mean, that's right. Evidentiary, right? I mean, that's a camera running and a candidate speaking. But what about those that are writing articles about what they saw? I mean, there's no question there's some mass confusion between what the real facts are, and kind of opens the door a bit to manipulation. Now we're gonna have to take a quick break here. We're on a hard clock here, and I apologize for that. We're gonna have to take a short commercial break here, but I think that's a good subject to talk about when we come back from break, and that is, how do people what should people do to make sure the stories that they're reading about and that they're following and that they're covering are the truth? Because I know for me, I've got to read 3 or 4 newspapers, look at 3 or 4 newscasts, and I just like to find out from you, where do you get your news? So when we come back, I'm going to ask you that, and hopefully you'll share that with us. We're going to take our short break. We'll be right back with more from Candy Crowley. You're listening to the Costa Report.
Big data is changing the way organizations work. From data-driven marketing and ad targeting to the connected car, big data is fueling product innovation and new revenue opportunities. It's creating a culture in which business and IT leaders join forces to realize value from all data. They infuse analytics everywhere and make speed a differentiator, gaining competitive advantage from faster, more informed decisions. Leading organizations are creating new business models, developing new roles, and defining new big data architectures, including an infrastructure that can manage and process exploding volumes of structured and unstructured data, in motion as well as at rest, while protecting data privacy and security. Find out how IBM Big Data and Analytics can transform your business. Visit www.ibm.com/bigdata today.
Today we have the honor of visiting with Scott Caraccioli of Caraccioli Cellars. So tell us a little bit about your winemaker.
Michelle Salg was the founding winemaker at Roeder Estate in Anderson Valley and really embodies what we were looking for in somebody who could deliver a sparkling wine project in an area that really hadn't done it the way that we were looking to.
You've certainly been on the bleeding edge, and so has your winemaker. It has made all the difference in the world in the quality of wines that are coming out of Caraccioli Cellars.
To find out more about Caraccioli wines, visit us at www.caracciolicellars.com or stop by our tasting room at the corner of Ocean and Dolores in downtown Carmel, California. That's Caraccioli Cellars, Caraccioli Cellars, where one bottle is never enough.
Hello, folks. Michael Olson here, talking with Rena Mills, RV Service Center, way up at the top of Santa Cruz, 2525 Mission. Rena, it's been hot, bad news for RV roofs.
What happens during the summer is all those sealants at the top of your roof start cracking up, and in the winter, when the rain comes, you've got nothing but leaks everywhere.
Well, it rained. So what should people do now that the rainy season is coming?
Stop by RV Service Center for a free roof inspection. We climb up and we check all the sealants, caulkings to make sure that they're still rubberized and flexible enough to keep your RV watertight.
So Rena had a good friend who backed up under some trees and now he's got a little nick on his roof. What should he do?
Bring it down to RV Service Center. We'll inspect it, and you can actually claim that as an insurance claim and receive a new roof. When you have your insurance work completed at RV Service Center, we give you a gift certificate equal to the value of your deductible.
Wow, that's like a free repair. RV Service Center, 2525 Mission, way up at the top of Santa Cruz. Keep the water out, keep the fun in.
Hi, I'm George Norrie from Coast to Coast AM, and I want to give a special shout-out to MZ and his staff at our longtime affiliate, KSCO AM 1080 in Santa Cruz. KSCO is a truly independent talk radio station that really does serve its community in ways that you don't see very much anymore. Most stations produce little, if any, original programming. KSCO is just the opposite. Most of the KSCO programming is locally produced and features topics and talent of local interest. I'm honored to host one of the few syndicated programs on KSCO, and I really admire KSCO's commitment to diversity, localism, and most of all, to putting out a powerful message about health and longevity through its strong association with the Youngevity Company. I urge you to go online to kscohealth.com, purchase the Healthy Start Pack or Beyond Tangy Tangerine, and start 2015 on track to good health. Go to kscohealth.com.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and my guest today is legendary political correspondent and anchor Candy Crowley. And before the break, you were pointing out that there are more sources than ever for the news, but this has also created a challenge for folks who are trying to figure out which news is credible. So how do you go about sorting through this? Yeah, how do you sort through it all?
Well, I have joked, sort of, that what we really need is a good housekeeping seal on the internet where you could go and find out, okay, this site has been accurate 98% of the time for the last year. Since we don't have that, look, I try to go first to, if it's an issue, to both sides of the issue. So I'll go flat out to whatever the sort of leading proponent and opponent of an issue is, and read what they have to say about it. I will check in with the LA Times, the Chicago Trib. Certainly I read Politico. But I'm like you. I'm a news consumption junkie. And so I'll read everything. And I think about these people, who are getting up and putting the kids in the car and going, see, it's our job to keep up. It's not their job to keep up. And so to kind of winnow it down, as you know, there are some fact check folks out there. The Annenberg Public Policy Center does factcheck.org.
Yes.
The Tampa Bay Times has politifact.com. And it's a good place to start. In some ways, fact checkers have now become part of the argument. So I know that that's out there. But those are places to go that have – Brooks Jackson, who I have known forever and a day, went to the Annenberg, the factcheck.org, and he is a great reporter and used to cover ads, fact check ads and everything, and they've done wonders up there. So I tell people all the time, you have to read red and blue sites. redstate.org, is it redstate.org or .com? But Red State is one place to go. Huffington Post. Do not confine yourself to the place that tells you what you want to hear.
That's exactly right. But most people don't have time. As you say, you and I are junkies, and we read everything and anything because we don't care. If there's a good idea, we don't really care who has it. So we just want to be on top of it. But I think, given that most families have two working parents and they're working hard to keep food on the table, they don't really necessarily have the time to do that. I'm for what you said. There needs to be some way of getting a stamp of approval. I agree. I love that good housekeeping stamp of approval.
Right. It's funny because I've said that to kids in college and they look at me like, what is she talking about? So it must be something from, I just remember that from magazine, the magazine Good Housekeeping. And, if the toaster got a stamp of approval, it's a great toaster. Well, we really do need that for sites.
Right. It was a testing facility. Yeah, it was a testing facility that tested it and made sure that the toaster didn't burn up and catch a fire and was as it was represented in advertising. And so you knew it had been quality assured before you bought it.
Right.
And we do need something like that.
Way to do that. Yeah.
I agree. Not long ago, the Obama administration wanted to put observers inside newsrooms to determine how stories were selected. And, of course, that got such an uproar that that they completely backed off. Is that, in your view, something the government needs to study, or is that something the free market's going to take care of?
I think the free market, I think people can tell a good product versus a bad one. It may take time, but no, I don't. The government in the newsroom, the government can study whatever the heck it wants to study, I suppose. I think that people tend to complain about, how many studies do we need to tell us, what we already know. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, to me, the government's got no business being in newsrooms. I understand that newsrooms cover the government. And if they want to make, if the quote the government, whether that's the FCC or the White House, sure, they're free. They can do whatever they want. But the idea of sitting in the newsroom, having a government observer in the newsroom is chilling.
Yeah, I know. Everyone went crazy over that, and they might have talked to some people in the newsroom before they made that announcement, but maybe that's just too logical on my part. So I'm going to switch gears here for just a minute because there was a decision that you made that I just could not figure out. And I promised myself if I ever had a chance to interview you, I had to ask you this. How did you come to be selected as the moderator for the Obama-Romney presidential debate? Because it seemed to me like I wouldn't have taken that job. You can't win. I mean, whichever side doesn't work, always blames the moderator. Right?
It's funny because seconds before I went out onto the stage to moderate the debate, someone was fussing with my hair and fussing with my makeup, and my senior producer was down there trying to, keep me calm and everything. And I looked at him and I said, when this is over, half of America's going to hate us. We're just not really sure which half.
That's exactly right. Look what they did to Jim Lehrer. Jim Lehrer couldn't have been more fair, right? He could not have been more fair. And, of course, he gets blamed for everything. I saw him a couple weeks after the debate, and, he was shaking his head. He couldn't figure out what he'd done. You were at the top of your game. I thought, wow, why would she agree to do this?
And I would agree to do it again because it was great fun. But how they called and said, we've selected you and would like you to, host a debate. And I said, sure. I saw it as a challenge. And was I aware of the kind of pressure that would be on before, during, after? I don't think you can know that until maybe I was, naive to the extent of which you became like this sort of focal point, probably. But it didn't seem to me to be a controversial decision at all. It was like, oh, wow, yeah.
But you knew half the country would be upset with how you handled one of the candidates.
Remember that, and I guess, it's funny, I should have, beforehand, both Tom Brokaw, I think, and certainly Carol Simpson had, people interviewed them about, well, what's this like, and would you like to be the, and so Carol would say, go rogue, Candy, da-da-da-da-da. I thought, what are these people talking about? And Tom, I think, said something like, and these are not direct quotes, so it's something along the lines of, you've got no idea what's about to hit you, or something like that. And clearly, it is a lot more pressure before, during, after from just about everybody, the people that write you and say, you have to make sure this question is asked and don't do this and do that and da-da-da, and all of that. But having said that, it was still a blast for me. I mean, it was fascinating. And I would do it again, but I'd be much more aware of how intense the pressure is.
Yeah, and how judgmental the viewing public is. I understand for you it was a tremendous challenge and a tremendous opportunity, and I could understand that. But given the success of your career, I thought that was taking a big gamble. But, that's the kind of courageous journalist you've always been. So, I guess I understand it from that standpoint. Now, we're going to have to take another short break, and when we come back, we're going to find out what Crowley really thinks about the nation's business and how it's being run in Washington. You're listening to the Costa Report.
In the opening of All Quiet on the Western Front, Eric Maria Remarque wrote, "This book is to be neither an accusation nor a confession, and least of all, an adventure, for death is not an adventure to those who stand face to face with it. It will simply try to tell of a generation of men who, even though they may have escaped its shells, were destroyed by the war. Today, Project Healing Waters offers men and women that have escaped the shells of war the opportunity to heal by teaching our returning veterans to fly fish in some of the most beautiful, tranquil rivers in our country. These natural surroundings have the ability to restore the human spirit, and with your help, Project Healing Waters is able to reach out to thousands of our men and women in the military every year. For information on how you can help, go to projecthealingwaters.org. Please give and give generously to those who have put their lives on the line for you. That's projecthealingwaters.org. Help those who have escaped the shells of war and need your help to come all the way back.
Hi, registered pharmacist Ben Fuchs here. I've been studying healthy bodies for 35 years, and what I've got to tell you may shock and surprise you, but if you listen up, it may change your life. Wrinkles and aging skin and thinning skin and youthful skin are largely about the meat, about the connective tissue, muscle tissue matrix, which means we can exercise that too. Muscle tissue and connective tissue are responsive to exercise. You build connective tissue, you build muscle tissue when you lift weights. Well, if muscle tissue and connective tissue make up the bulk of your skin, it should make sense that you should be able to exercise your skin too to prevent wrinkles and crow's feet and turkey neck and all the other visible signs, or most of the other visible signs of aging. So how do you exercise the skin? Well, There's a couple ways. First of all, you can literally do facial exercises, facial muscle exercises. You can contract your mouth muscles. You can contract your eye muscles. You can open up your eyes really, really wide, and then you can close your eyes slowly and open them and close them. You can move your chewing muscle. And it's one of the biggest, if it's not the biggest muscle in the body. And a lot of stress is held in this masseter muscle. It runs from underneath your ear all along the jawline, and it's where you clench. And it has to do with the stress response. And if you just relax that masseter muscle, you'll find yourself completely relaxing. This is how important working the muscles of the face is. And when it comes to anti-aging and aging, much of the aging of the face is due to these micro contractions that occur nonstop. Learning how to work with the muscles of the face can go a long way, not only towards helping reduce some of the visible signs of aging, but also with reducing the signs and the symptoms of stress. Pharmacist Ben here, urging you to go to kscohealth.com to order Beyond Tangy Tangerine, the Healthy Start Pack, and other nutritional supplements that I personally use and recommend. You can purchase these premium quality products at wholesale prices online at kscohealth.com. That's kscohealth.com. I'm the pharmacist that believes that staying healthy and strong is not only about medicine, it's about giving your body the raw materials it needs to do its work. Go to kscohealth.com. Make sure you check out the cool videos, too, at kscohealth.com. That's kscohealth.com.
Hi, I'm Sam Quinn for Shirt Crafters, and I'm here with Shirt Crafters owner Scott D. Gold. And Scott, what do you think sets Shirt Crafters apart?
Well, Sam, it starts with our graphic design department. We can take any tired old logo and turn it into an eye-grabbing brand. Then we can make that logo stand out in the community by turning it into a full-size vehicle decal. Next, we put that logo on polos, hats, and T-shirts, and just about anything else you can think of for your employees and customers for promotional purposes. And that's how we brand your business with Shirt Crafters.
Top quality design and printing, fast turnaround, and right on the price. Shirt Crafters is located at 111 Engle Street in Santa Cruz, or go to shirtcrafters.com. You can give them a call at 831-423-0537. That's Shirt Crafter at 831-423-0537.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and if you're just joining us, my guest today is Candy Crowley. I've been thinking maybe we could change gears for just a moment here and talk about some of the challenges our leaders are facing. From a person who's been observing Congress and several White House administrations for several years, give us a little report card. Let's start with immigration. How do you think we're doing there?
Spinning our wheels. I don't know what the grade is for that. But that's incomplete. I don't know. Now it looks as though what we have is obviously the House. They're both Republican controlled, but the House, which has, as you know, very different rules than the Senate does, goes ahead and passes this funding bill, which is money that will keep the Department of Homeland Security in money, right?
Right.
So it's now controversial because the House has moved to put on that bill things that will block the president's executive action that he did to sort of offer or shield some undocumented workers from deportation. Okay, so now it goes to the Senate. Well, we still have in the Senate what we've always had. You need 60 votes to bring a bill to the floor and vote on it. And the Republicans don't have 60 votes. Now, once again, we have the Republicans stuck. Are they not going to fund the Department of Homeland Security? I don't think so. I don't think they want that to be the first thing they do right off the bat, being in charge on Capitol Hill. So you now have kind of a Republican versus Republican thing. Certainly, the Republicans can try to pass this bill on the Senate side, but the Democrats can block it. They can filibuster the bill.
So then they block it. It goes back to the House, and the House has to take out the things that won't pass, right?
That would block the president.
That would block the president, and then it has to go back to the Senate. In the meantime, we're losing time, so that's the spinning of the wheels, right?
Yeah.
So why do that? Why send anything to the Senate that you already know isn't going to get the 60 votes? What's the point?
To put that, well, first of all, as you know, John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, a Republican, has trouble keeping his folks, in line. Now, what kind of bill the Speaker would like, I'm not sure, but this was the kind of bill that he needed to pass because the Republicans in the Senate are, I'm thinking the president has exceeded his authority with these executive actions, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact is that they can't get it through the Senate the way it currently is. And, there's always push and pull between the House and what the House can do and what the Senate can do. And that's why they make conference committees. But I can't think of a bigger waste of time and energy than sending something to the Senate that you already know in advance isn't gonna fly. Unless you want to make a big political debate about it and say, yes, we did put forward a bill and it was a perfect bill and it would have solved all our problems from here to kingdom come. Only the Democrats blocked it. Well, is that it? I mean, are we looking for more blame? The party of no now, right? It's like who's on the other foot. So who's the party of no? Well, the Democrats. They're going to block it, immigration reform. Now, mind you, this is not immigration reform. This is blocking what the president did, which is different. But I think some of this leadership may end up coming from the states. I think the House and the Senate have maybe 9 months tops to do anything, quote, big on immigration. And by that, I mean a comprehensive bill. I just don't think that's going to happen. Maybe some piecemeal bills, but a big comprehensive bill. And then guess what? The 2016 presidential race really is underway. And you and I know it's already underway anyway. Right. So then it comes down to who is going to, pick up the baton for either party. And what you find is when you go out and you talk to some of these Republican governors, they're kind of a little more pro-immigration reform than the folks on Capitol Hill because they're where the rubber meets the road, and they say this is a problem. It may mean that there is some faster track or some better deal for those who are already here without documents, but we have to do something. So a lot's going to do. I think major immigration reform is done until there's another president. I really do. I just can't see it happening. Well, you might be right about that, and that would certainly be a shame. Again, I think people did vote for a change in Congress because they wanted to get out of this gridlock. But I think they've got a short amount of time to show that vote was impactful and is going to break the gridlock. After which it doesn't really matter which way it would have gone. Now, let's move on to ISIS and terrorism abroad. How are we doing there? How's the Congress and White House doing there? I think if there is one, how do we ever know? I remember thinking when the war in Iraq started, like that very first night, I don't know if you remember, and bombs were going over into Baghdad, and there was this kind of moment where you thought, what's going on here? What do they know? We certainly hope they're right. We certainly hope they're looking out for the right things. I think the big question in Washington remains what it has always been. Where does privacy end and security begin? And I think that's the debate that's going on now. I mean, obviously, everyone is united behind, okay, here are the bad guys and here are the good guys. And everyone understands how much information is gold here, stopping these things before they happen. And I think more and more what you are seeing, certainly after what happened in France, is even the best of information somehow with very determined people who are apparently well-funded can really create chaos and tragedy. And that feeling of vulnerability is, I think, something, that is this century's sort of cross to bear in a lot of ways, because I think this is scary stuff. And every time you talk to somebody on Capitol Hill or even at the White House or even at the CIA who's involved in this, I remember asking General Hayden once, former head of the CIA. I remember saying to him, like, given what you know, and I know you can't tell me stuff, but given what you know, who's more afraid about what's going on, me or you? Mm-hmm. And he said, me. And so, I just think that these are, without, you don't want to go out and, cause, I don't want to yell fire in a theater, but these are very uncertain times, and what we're seeing is no place is immune.
Well, that's
Belgium,
yeah. I think it is a very scary time. My father worked for the CIA during the Vietnam War, and when I tell people the information that the CIA had about the spread of the war into Cambodia, Laos, and putting illegal bases and illegal American troops in these countries without congressional approval, without all these things, people just shake their heads. And I said, there's a lot that goes on that just cannot be made transparent. As much as we want it to, there is no way to have security with full transparency. We understand that, but it's such a gray area.
Right, it is. Nor is there any way to have, well, there's no way to have complete security, but more security almost always comes at a price.
That's right, an intrusion into privacy. And so you have to ask yourself, if you can stop an ISIS attack, but you got to tap everyone's phones and listen 24/7, right. Is that the appropriate price to pay? And I think those are the almost philosophical questions that we've got to come to terms with. And there's no clear answer. I guess that's the best way to put it. And we have to take our final break, and we'll be right back with Candy Crowley. You're listening to the Costa Report.
No matter what business you're in, what happens in Washington can make the difference between business success or failure. That's why understanding where government is headed is so important in today's competitive business environment. But where can you find experts who know firsthand the inner workings of our nation's capital? The American Program Bureau is your leading source for speakers whose experience offer unique insights into where U.S. policy is headed. Speakers like Seth Harris, former acting U.S. Secretary of Labor, Alyssa Mastromonaco, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, and General Carl Eikenberry, former U.S. Ambassador to Afghanistan. For your next meeting or conference, contact the American Program Bureau at apbspeakers.com or 617-614-1600. That's apbspeakers.com. The American Program Bureau, making history, one speech at a time.
Every day our world gets more complicated. Not only is new information coming at us faster than we can manage, new regulations, technology, and the effects of globalization have made it much more difficult to succeed. That's why I wrote The Watchman's Rattle, a book that, for the first time, explains how complexity makes it hard to separate facts from fiction, and eventually causes us to make important decisions based on unproven beliefs. And not just us, our leaders also fall prey to this phenomena. But here's the good news. Once you know the symptoms to watch for, you can safeguard against them. So please, go to RebeccaCosta.com, that's RebeccaCosta.com, and order your copy of The Watchman's Rattle. It only takes a few minutes and the shipping is free. That's RebeccaCosta.com. Do it now. You'll be glad you did.
Hi, this is Erica Fisher. I'm a certified personal trainer at the world-famous Chaminade Resort right here in Santa Cruz. I've got some good news for you. Right now, I will award to the first 5 people who call me a free introductory personal training session at the ultra-luxurious state-of-the-art fitness center right here at the Chaminade in Santa Cruz. This personal training session will include a personal assessment, setting goals, and an introduction to using the equipment customized to meet your special situation. So call me right now at 831 833-588-7098. And if you're lucky enough to be one of the first 5 callers, I will be seeing you at the Chaminade Fitness Center for a one-on-one free appointment. 831-588-7098. Call now, 831-588-7098, ericafitness.com.
Are you ready for this? Flight 1080 is looking for new members to join the team. You guys, I really don't want you to miss out on this opportunity. I need people in Hollister, San Jose, Gilroy, Watsonville, Salinas, and Monterey. All new teammates will receive free training and upline support. Go first class and enroll with the CEO Pack and get free sales materials and attend VIP meetings. For a limited time, I'll include free business cards. That's right, free business cards for all new CEOs to help you get started. You don't want to miss out on this offer. If you have free access to a church, hall, or any other meeting place in these areas, contact me at 831-218-5726 or DM at ksco.com. This is a golden opportunity for bilingual people too. Hollister, San Jose, Gilroy, Watsonville, Salinas, Monterey, and surrounding areas. Let's work smarter. Let's work together. To sign up by phone, call 831-218-5726. To join online, go to davemichaels.youngevity.com. You'll find information in both English and Spanish. That's davemichaels.youngevity.com or call 831-218-5726. That's 218-5726.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and my guest today is Candy Crowley. So what issues being ignored by the mainstream media and keeps you awake at night? What should we have our eyes on?
Well, I do think that, and I mean this on a global sense, not a U.S. sense, I do think that the growing gap between the poor, and I mean the very poor, and the rich is not a situation that leads us to what everybody always says they want, which is, peace and, world peace and this and that. I think that the fact that that is growing bigger throughout the world, the abject poverty in some of these nations. And by the way, this is where a lot of terrorism is bred, right? In the poorest, most hopeless spots in the world. And it's not an excuse for terrorism, and I'm not in any way suggesting that, but I think that it is, sort of morally and policy-wise to ignore this story and to not be able to bring it to light in a way that people can, grab hold of it, is a sort of a dereliction of journalistic duty, because I do think when you look at it, poverty does tend to be at the core of a lot of what ails the world.
I cannot agree with you more. To me, there's a very simple explanation for all this instability in the Middle East, and that is if you take a country, let's just take Egypt as an example. During Mubarak's reign, you have massive population growth. You can't make that kind of an increase when you've got less than 5% of your land is arable to feed your country. And then all of a sudden, the Arab Spring comes about and they say, well, we need jobs, we need schools, we need hospitals. And I'm thinking, well, what you really have to do is, well, it's not a surprise you would need those things if you have massive population growth. So even stepping back from the poverty issue, if you have that kind of growth in population but no infrastructure to take care of people, to give them jobs and a meaningful life, you're going to have instability.
Absolutely. And again, whenever this sort of brought up, people say, well, there's no excuse for terrorism. Absolutely. There's no, I'm not equating poverty with murdering people, but I do think that's where discontent breeds, that when you are hopeless, that when there are no avenues, that's where people begin to lash out. And so just again, not to mention just the fact that there are people who starve or who die of diseases they don't need to die of, who can't find a job. I mean, the unemployment rate, you mentioned Egypt. I wish I had it at the tip of my tongue, but the unemployment rate in Egypt among young men is ridiculous, and
it is absolutely ridiculous. I have a friend of mine who says that anarchy is just 6 missed meals away. You take any society, and they miss 6 meals, They go into anarchy and absolute chaos. I think he's right. I mean, for me, you take my hot shower away and I go crazy. But I will say that in these countries where you have massive population increases and no opportunities, you're going to have revolution and instability. And the fact is that no matter what government structure you put in, democratic, fascist, whatever, they can't solve that problem overnight. In fact, I would say that the instability will continue for a very long time until those economies can catch up.
Absolutely. And it's not some short-term thing, but to me, and I think for journalism, since that was the basis of your question,
yep.
It is, there has to be some way to bring this home to the land of plenty. You know, some way to have a viewer or a listener or a reader grab onto this story and say, holy cow, what can we do? I don't know what that is. I've got no great ideas.
Yeah.
You can't just do a story about, oh, my goodness, there's a big wealth gap and there's a lot of poor people in the world and let it go.
No, you're right about that. There's got to be a way to make it resonate, just like when Dan Rather brought the Vietnam War into our living rooms. When he went down there and started reporting on the front lines, you know, that had such an impact on us. And I think in that same way, we've got to connect with what effect that poverty has.
Happening.
Now, before we run out of time, I have to ask you about your plans. Not too long ago, Jane Pauley, she wrote a book about people over 50 reinventing themselves and gave all these examples. And so there's a lot of rumors that are floating around about Candy Crowley reinventing herself, possibly as a person that joins a presidential campaign. What's that all about?
That will not happen.
I didn't think so, but I had to ask. Everyone's saying, no, she's joining Hilary Clinton's campaign. And I said, I just don't see that.
Well, you are spot on here. There is no way I would join a campaign or a politician, or it's too deeply in my bones. To me, that's the dark side.
Yeah, but they're going to come after you. They're going to come after you, because who else is more knowledgeable? I mean, that bridge between the media and campaigns. You've got the experience on both sides. But boy, I think you ought to tape every refusal and collect all your letters that say, no, thank you. All the polite ways you say no, thank you. To that.
And honestly, I have nothing against politicians, even as long as I've covered them, but I just don't see me in that. It's just not what I'm, primed to do.
Well, hopefully, you get a lot of massages, visit a spa, go to some really nice resorts and have some great meals, drink some good wine, enjoy your retirement. And, an idea, as Jane Pauley says, an idea will come to you. Unexpected, out of left field. Lastly, I know I'm going to be inundated with listener emails asking me how to stay on top of your activities. Do you have a website, or are you on social media where people can keep track of you?
I am on social media, and I think I'm going to give out the wrong one, though. my whoever was on Crowley CNN on Twitter,
right.
It changed automatically to Candy Crowley, I think.
Okay, all right. So they can find you on Facebook, although you prefer that they don't find you for a little while.
Yes, they won't find me for a little while because I am going to go do a little scuba diving, but then I'll be back and I really will figure out the next act.
That's wonderful. I hope you'll come back and tell us about it. Now, that's all the time we've got left, but before we say goodbye, I want to make sure that I thank you for your public service all these years. Thank you, Ms. Crowley.
Oh, Rebecca, thank you so much, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Come back soon.
Deal.
If your station is leaving us after the first hour and you have a question or a comment to make about our interview with Candy Crowley, you can email me at RebeccaCosta.com or drop me a note on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're all over the internet, and I'd love to hear from you. Regardless of your political point of view, If you're a person who stays on top of the news at one time or another, you've been the beneficiary of Candy Crowley's career as a political correspondent. She has had access to the administrations of Reagan, Bush Sr., Clinton, George Bush, Obama, and everybody in Congress, and reported on the important challenges that our leaders in our country have faced. And now Crowley's going to take the next step in her career and reinvent herself. And I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to seeing where she takes her experience. If you have some thoughts about what Crowley had to say today, take a moment to send your comments to me by going to our webpage, RebeccaCosta.com. It's easy to remember. It's myname.com. And click on the word contact at the top of the home page. And if you missed the full interview with Crowley or any of our other previous guests, remember you can download episodes of the Costa Report from our website, Apple iTunes, Podbean, Voice America, and our YouTube channel. You can also find our weekly radio blog posted every week on our webpage, and the blog captures the headline news from our interviews. So if you do ever have to miss a program, which I hope you don't, you can still find out what our guests had to say by reading the blog. It's short, it's to the point, and it reports the kind of news that the mainstream media won't. And while we have a few minutes, let me take time to thank listeners around the country for taking time to order the Watchman's Rattle over the holidays. It's now in its 9th printing, and if you haven't gotten a copy of the book yet and want to know what all the buzz is about, you can also pick that up at our website as well. My guest next week was the former president of Pepsi and CEO of Apple Computer, John Sculley. He'll be here to talk about a radical transformation that's taking place in American business, one every entrepreneur should have their eye on. Don't miss the always controversial John Sculley next week on the only news program that puts policy ahead of politics. Now stay tuned for a second hour of Straight Talk Radio. You're listening to the Costa Report.